Good morning. Welcome to Executing My Exodus Ministries Freedom Fridays with your host, which is myself, Ashley D. Listen, the Lord has allowed us to see one more Friday, and not only is it the first Friday of April, but it's also Good Friday, y'all. Yes, we have made it to Good Friday of year 2023. And to put the icing on the cake, the Lord has allowed me to see 32 years today, y'all. Yes, I am 32, and I am so grateful to the Lord for allowing me to see one more year on this earth. So listen, I just want to share a few things with you today that the Lord dropped in my spirit. If you have been following me, you know this month's theme is April showers, hashtag when it rains, it pours. So as I was meditating and talking to the Lord on what to talk to you all about, I thought about vulnerability. There is freedom in vulnerability. Yes, there is freedom in vulnerability. Now, immediately you might look at me and say, Sister Ashley, who being vulnerable in these streets? Ain't nobody about to be open and honest about how they feel. I ain't doing that. Like, I ain't about to let nobody know what I'm feeling. And you have every right to feel that way. And if I'm honest, I've had those same sentiments for years. But I just want you to hear me out of why I say there is freedom and vulnerability. So let's go back to when we were kids. You know, most of us were taught not to be vulnerable. Like, we heard different things like, you better not cry. You better not let nobody see you cry. We ain't raising no punks. You got to be strong. You know, all those different things we heard growing up, especially our young boys. They were young boys hearing that, saying that we're not raising any punks. You know, man up. You know, I'm raising a man. You better not cry out here. You know, they heard those things where now they are grown men who do not know how to express their emotions. They don't know how to be vulnerable because they were taught how to be strong, grown men, be responsible men, take care of your families, but they don't know how to express themselves. They are emotionally detached, as well as women. Women were taught not to be super sensitive and not to cry and don't let nobody see you cry. We were taught all those different things growing up to the place where we have become grown men and women who do not know how to be vulnerable, who do not know how to express their emotions and their feelings about certain things, especially with the majority of us going through the highs and lows, twists and turns of life. We don't know how to express our vulnerability. Instead, we kick into straight survival mode. Like, we know how to survive a storm. We know how to survive the highs, the lows, the twists and turns of life. However, deep down inside, we're struggling because we weren't taught how to be vulnerable. We have emotional issues, mental issues. Some of us are depressed. We deal with anxiety. Some of us have experienced suicidal thoughts, all these different things because we did not learn how to be vulnerable. Now, I'm not knocking the mamas, the grandmas, and uncles and aunts and, you know, all those before us that taught us that, because truthfully, that's how they were raised. That's how they were taught, and they just brought that down to us. And so they did the best they could with what they had. But because we weren't taught how to be vulnerable, we don't know how to handle our emotions properly, especially when we're going through our April showers. So today, I just want to let you know there's freedom in being vulnerable. Now, I'm not saying that you can be vulnerable with everybody, because you can't. I would never tell you that. You have to be very wise, very mindful, and discerning about who you decide to be vulnerable with. Now, I hope and pray that most of you that are watching this have a very strong godly community where you can be vulnerable with them and tell them, you know, how you feel, express your feelings and your emotions. But for those of you who do not, you know, you can always turn to the Lord, the creator of all things, and choose to be vulnerable with him, because he hears your cries. He's there to hold you, to comfort you in the midst of your storm. So you have room and freedom to be vulnerable. There is freedom in being vulnerable. Now, is it uncomfortable? Yes, it is. Very uncomfortable, because if you're a person that, like, if I can be transparent, for years, y'all, I was a savage, and I mean a savage. Like, I didn't allow anyone or anything to really like, you know, hurt me. Like if you did, like I deal with it for a moment, okay, I give you like 48 hours. That's it. After that, I'm letting it roll off me, and I would never deal with my feelings and emotions about the trauma that I had came in contact with. And so for years and years, because I didn't do it, because I was not vulnerable, all of that stuff began to build a wall, like a major wall, where I was just completely guarded, and I just did not know how to be vulnerable and express my feelings. Then it was to a point that my best friend literally said to me 2 weeks ago. She said, Ashley, you definitely used to be the person where if I asked you how you were doing, you would say straight face, yeah, I'm good. But truthfully, you got a lot going on in your head and your heart and your mind, and you would never express your emotions. Ashley now is the total opposite. And I think the person that really showed me or really expressed that to me was when I was talking to First Lady Marquita Hines. Shout out to First, way the cross, if y'all know her. Me and her were in deep conversation one day, and she said, Ashley, when you get around 28 or 29, there's going to be an entire change when it comes down to your emotions. You're going to be a lot more emotional. You're going to cry about everything. You don't even know why you cry, but it's gonna happen. And she won't lie, y'all. Around 28, 29 is when everything began to shift and change. I went from being a savage to somebody that was completely vulnerable, that was really expressing how they felt, their thoughts, their feelings. If you hurt my feelings, I was gonna tell you. Now, yeah, I was gonna tell you, and I was gonna cry about it, and I was gonna feel all certain different things, emotions all over the place. I did, but once I learned how to release all of that, I began to feel freedom, because no longer was I holding the weights of life and the weights of, you know, trying to deal with everything that I had, that I was going through on my mental or emotional. Because after a while, when you continue to hold all that stuff in, it affects your mental, your emotional, your physical, and your spiritual state, psychological state. It affects everything. So that's why if you don't hear anything that I have said today, there is freedom in being vulnerable. Just be wise in who you decide to be vulnerable with. And when all else fails and you have no one to talk to or express those feelings and emotions to, you know you can always depend on God. For He is the creator of all things, and He knows what you're feeling anyway. But cry out to Him. He hears your cry. He will comfort you. He will be there for you in the midst of every storm, in the midst of your April showers. So I just want to encourage you today that there is freedom and vulnerability. No longer continue to allow all of the things that you're dealing with to build walls around you. It's time to break those walls. We need to be better about what we carry in our mental, emotional, physical, and psychological state. So no longer bury those feelings inside, but learn how to be vulnerable, but only to those that you trust, that's not going to manipulate or, you know, try to get over on you. And when all else fails, of course, if you have nobody else to turn to, you know you can always turn to the Lord. So I hope something was said to encourage you on this beautiful Friday. I know that was very hard to hear, because being vulnerable is very uncomfortable. But I promise you, when you begin to do it, you will feel a sense of freedom and relief. So again, I hope something was said to encourage you and just give you something to think about on this beautiful Friday. Thank you for tuning in into Executing My Excellence Ministries Freedom Fridays with your host, which is myself, Ashley D. God bless you.